Let me ask you guys a question that I probably know the answer to. Have you ever played poker in a gymnasium on a Friday afternoon? All right guys, meetup game underway here in Chicago area. Not quite downtown, we're out in the suburbs, but we're gonna call it Chicago for ease of communication, really. Outside those curtains are a lot of games. We're keeping it low stakes today, we're keeping it friendly. We're playing $1, $3, $400 max buy-in. We're still gonna try and run it up. Actually up a couple $100 in early trading. Hang out here in this nice little VIP lounge that they set up for us to talk about some hand histories. I'm actually a little bit undecided on how many hands I'm gonna go over from this session. Might just keep it social. But we're hanging out here at a place called The Max with the Chicago Charitable Gaming Group. I'll probably bring on one of the guys that runs the situation out here so he can explain to you what exactly the operation, how it all works. All right, Ken, founder of Chicago Charitable Games.
Yes.
What is Chicago Charitable Games?
You said it was going to be an easy question. That's pretty good. What my company does is we help and work with non-for-profits to help them with the paperwork, the licensing for all of the charity poker aspect of it. We work with them on the venues. We work with them with the equipment suppliers and the vendors to give them a bulk discount. So basically what my company does is we bring all of those charities together, let them use that collective buying power to get, you know, lower prices on the venues, lower prices on equipment, and then obviously share in the marketing cost. And then that's predominantly what my company does, is we market the events, promote them to make sure that they can make the most amount of money possible.
Dive into a couple quick hands. First interesting one came when I opened up Queen Jack of clubs. I believe early position $10 and saw one collar in position. Flop ourselves a flush draw on the king high flop. Go ahead and c-bet that, and he looks like he wants to put in a raise, but he decides on a flat call. So gonna take that in mind when we see the third club hit the turn. So usually a pretty good situation when there's a player who showed interest on the flop, and then we make a pretty nutted hand here on the turn. Gonna go ahead and continue betting. I make it $25, and sure enough, he does put in a raise right away. It makes it $60 to go. I'm gonna go ahead and put more money in right away. Two reasons: A, he showed a lot of interest so far, and B, I'm out of position here. So just gonna go ahead and 3-bet this flop. I jam it all in there. I actually didn't realize how much money my opponent had in this hand. He has some green chips that I didn't notice. So he's got like $300 additional. But after thinking about it and being a little reluctant to call, he does make the call, and it turns out he's drawing dead with a smaller flush. So we find some run good here in early trading. Shortly after that, there was a straddled pot where I looked down at ace-3 of hearts. We go ahead and raise it up to $20 in late position. The big blind and the straddler call. Flop comes ace high, but it's pretty dry, so I don't know if there's too much point in betting this hand. So after they check it over to me, I just go ahead and check back for pot control. The turn brings the king of hearts. I think it's another good card for us because it opens up some possibilities of some hands that can continue versus a value bet from us. So after they check it over to us again on the turn, I bet $30, and the big blind makes the call. River's not an ideal card though, it's an offsuit queen. And what's even worse is that my opponent leads right out for $100. He does have a favorable shirt on. I could give him some action for that very reason, but I decide to make what is a reluctant but disciplined fold there on the river with my top pair weak kicker, and he shows us king queen for river 2 pair. That is better than a flopped 1 pair. Oh, it's Brad Owen wandering into the VIP lounge. Okay, I'm gonna go back out there, up a little bit, not a lot. More poker to be played amongst many tables here at the meetup game. Alright guys, back here in the VIP lounge. A couple of quick hands to report here. In the first one, we have a 4-way limp spot. We have 10-9 offsuit. I'm in late position here. It's just kind of whatever. Not exactly an ideal hand to just go ahead and limp along or even play in the first place, but we're doing it here in the meetup game. So we see a 4-way limped pot, limped flop of King 10-9 with 2 hearts. Action checks over to me. I'm gonna go ahead and bet this one, bet $10, and the big blind and the first limper make the call. 3 ways to a good turn card here. It's another 9. So we go ahead and fill up, we make a full house, and action checks over to me. I'm gonna play this one a little bit coy. There are some draws available. Perhaps a weak king might shut down, and some flush draws might shut down as well. So I'm just gonna check it back and set the trap here. River is a pretty good card for our exact hand here. It's an offsuit queen, so now there's 4 to a straight on the board. And even better news, the big blind leads out. He bets $25, the other player folds, and time to go ahead and put in a raise here for some more value. He's not very deep stacked, he's only got about $125 left, so I go ahead and jam all in. I raise it up, cover his stack. He doesn't think for too long before he goes ahead and calls it off. It turns out the trap was actually being set against us in the first place. He has queen jack offsuit, so he flopped the nuts, and things would not have turned out so rosy for us if we did not happen to turn a full house. But as it is, we find some run good, and we end up trapping the trappee. In this hand, there's a middle position limp before the hijack makes it $15. We look down to king jack offsuit. Not exactly a premium hand, not exactly one that's going to sustain too much aggression or anything of the sort. Probably some reverse implied odds, but we're at a meetup game, so we make a standard call here. The limper calls, so we're heading 3 ways to what looks like a pretty favorable flop. King, king, queen. Flop ourselves trips, and action checks over to us. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to get some value here. I go ahead and make it $15. The limper makes the call before the initial raiser puts in a check raise, makes it $65. I think we have a very clear call here. Not too much thought is gonna go into this. Don't wanna put in a re-raise and over-rep our hands. Obviously not folding. So we make a call, and the limper calls as well. So we're still 3 ways here, and suddenly this pot is swelling. Turn doesn't change anything, it's an offsuit deuce. The first player checks, the initial raiser continues betting, he bets $165. Not really loving the situation, but not gonna go anywhere with trips. Of course, I'm gonna go ahead and make a call, and the limper, he jams all in. It's somewhere around $500 total. The player in the middle thinks for a little while. Seems like he's got a very pained decision here before he makes the call. So very tough spot, and very interesting spot here. It seems like the limper, the player who limp called pre-flop, is going to always have a king here in this spot. There's lots of kings available. There's going to be hands such as king 10 suited, maybe a hand like king 9 suited. Again, it's one of those spots where we don't really love our hand, but we have such a strong hand as far as our range goes. Ace king, we probably would have 3-bet pre-flop. King queen, I would also probably 3-bet pre-flop some percentage of the time. That is the only better hand that I would also not 3-bet sometimes pre-flop. That leaves king jack as the next best hand. So I feel like it's a little bit too weak to fold in this instance. Of course, I'm not feeling that great about it. I feel like we're up against a king and then possibly pocket queens and maybe a very, very stubborn pocket aces, something of this sort. I go ahead and make the call here, and we're off to see a river card, which doesn't change anything. It's a 9. So aside from an open-ended straight draw of jack 10 that might have gotten there, that doesn't change too much. However, the player in the middle goes ahead and jams all in, so we have a pretty easy fold in this instance. There's no way he's doing that with pocket aces. He can only have king queen or pocket queens in this spot, so I'm just gonna go ahead and snap fold this stupid king jack hand. We get shown king queen from the player who had limped into the pot and called the initial bet. Pretty sweet situation for him versus the pocket queens from the initial raiser. And of course, myself flocking trips as well. The nut full house versus the second full house versus trips. What can you do? I probably could have maybe found a fold, because the only thing I can really beat is an overvalued pocket aces there on the turn once the player in the middle makes the call. It's tough though, because it's just so often that the limper, the player who limp called the initial pre-flop bet, he's just always gonna have a king there. And there's lots of kings, well, some kings at least, that we can beat. So if the player in the middle never has a king, that would mean that he either has pocket queens or a very stubborn pocket aces. I don't know, tough decision. Maybe I can let it go. Maybe I can save myself like $350, or I could just fold pre-flop. There's always that option of folding the king jack offsuit pre-flop. That's probably gonna be the most ideal choice out of all the choices. But it's a beat-up game, you know? Nobody likes to knit, but I'm starting to think that it might be better to just, you know, play good. Just play good.
I'm all set up there. Oh, it's good.
All right, guys, sneaking in here to record a quick voiceover. You know, in another video, maybe in the next video, I need to talk a little bit about, you know, the differences and how difficult it is between recording all these hands and the analysis of them at the actual venue versus doing a voiceover later on. But save that for another video. For now, let's take a look at this bomb pot. We're playing $20 a person, and we look down at pocket tens. We're playing a double board bomb pot here, which means we're seeing 2 flops, 9 ways, $20 a person. The first one comes pretty favorable. It comes 10 high and also just happens to be the nuts with these pocket tens. The second board also comes 10 high and also just happens to be the nuts with these pocket tens. Now, I don't know how many of you are mathematically inclined out there, but if somebody could tell me what the odds of this happening, flopping 2 sets with 1 pocket pair, what the math is behind that, what are the odds of that, feel free to let us all know in the comments down below. Anyway, there's an early position player who leads out for $20. The player on my right calls. As you can see, there's a flush draw on the top. There's some straight draws available on the bottom, so don't think we can just let this $20 bet slide. We're going to go ahead and put in a raise here. I make it $130 to go. There's a player in middle position who cold calls before the initial better goes ahead and folds. The player on my right also calls. So we're going 3 ways to the turn cards. The top one, it's the queen of clubs, and on the bottom, it's the 6 of clubs. So typical double board bomb pot, we now no longer have the nuts on either board, but it's not going to matter too much. Neither of these players have too much money behind. The player on my right goes ahead and he jams $160. Very straightforward call. That's going to cover the player in the middle. We are losing on both of these boards only if one player specifically has Jack 9 and the other player specifically has 8-7. Otherwise, we got half, and no matter what, we have equity anyway. So, easy call. The player in the middle thinks for a little bit, and he folds his hand. I say it's about as good of 2 flops as you can get.
Good of 2 flops as you can get.
Oh. It gets even better on the river cards. We fill up, making full houses on both boards. Gonna be tough for us to not scoop this one in. My opponent, as a matter of fact, shows 8-7 of spades for a turn straight on the bottom. He had it on the turn, but no good on the river. Like I said, we fill up on both boards. That is a fun one. These double board bomb pots are not exactly my specialty, but even I cannot screw up this double board bomb pot, flopping the nuts on both boards and rivering full houses on both boards.
The double ship it was pretty nice. 2 sets?
2 sets.
2 sets, pretty nice. Thanks,
And
sir.
2 boards. Yep. Worst logging event ever.
Tell me, how does it feel living that good life? Never ever really have to think twice about who you step on, you'll just pay the breakaway.
Alright guys, that's a wrap. It's a wrap from the VIP section of the meetup game. It's a wrap from the actual meetup game. And time to go, you know, do our thing. Hang out over at the bar. It's about 1:45 at the moment. I think the bar is open for another hour. There's a very good IPA that I've discovered here called Gummy something or other. So I'm gonna go grab another one of those. Another meetup game where we put together 22 tables worth of games. I feel like we aren't taking enough time to really acknowledge the ridiculousness of that number. 22 tables, and we sustained that number for an even longer time than we did at the Maryland Live where we set the record. This number of tables ties that record. Granted, this is a 1-3 game. It's a more approachable game than the 3-5, but just an amazing turnout. We're out here in the suburbs of Chicago. It's our first time in the Midwest, and we're definitely gonna have to be coming back here. If you had approached me when I started making these videos on this channel and told me that we would be getting 22 tables based around an idea that stemmed from this vlog, I would have told you you're crazy. 100% you're crazy.
Members at home.